I'm Linda Chapman.
And I'm Martin Chapman. I'm originally from Bolton. I worked at Bolton Colliery and I've been over here now 47 years when we got married. So now I classify Washington as my home.
I've lived here since 1975. My family were originally from South Shields, and my dad used to work in the mines, as his dad did before him, but my dad got TB when I was small, and he couldn't then go back to work in the mines. So he was in and out of work. There wasn't much work around in the northeast then, any other jobs. He worked for the council for a short while, but he was an unskilled person, doing labouring jobs. And then somebody who he knew, I think, went to Slough, and they got a job in a factory down there. So we went to Slough when I was 5, and there was a massive industrial estate there, but my parents were never really happy there because we had no family there. They were very family people. My mum had 5 brothers and sisters, so they felt like they were far away from that. And it was when they were building the new town in the 70s that because we lived in a council house in Slough, that they realised they would be able to come here, because at that time we had all of the industrial estates here as well. So my dad went to work at Dunlop's, and we also got a house which was just across the road from where we are now in Norham Court, and we were one of the first people to move into that house in 75. And then I started working in the bank in the galleries. Then I met Martin, and we got married in 79. Martin didn't want to live in Bolton. I think we had our names down on the housing list in Shields.
They offered us a flat in Tyne-Dock, which was
not a very nice place.
Not a nice place.
And at the time, and then we put our names down for Washington, but one of the flats on this estate, we're in Dilston now, in Mitford, came up for sale, and we decided to buy something instead, so we bought that. We moved to the top of Oxclose.
Cheers.
Because it was only a small flat when we had our family for a bigger house. And then we came here, and we always laugh about this, because when we had the flat, and when I lived at Norham Court, we used to walk up this side path and we'd look at these houses and go, wouldn't it be nice if we could afford one of those houses? So we say we're living the dream now. And in terms of house prices, we probably are compared to young people. So Washington's always been our home. When just before we were married, my parents went back to South Shields because that was just where their life was, their family. And I think people who came to Washington in the 70s, wherever they came from, Sunderland, Shields, wherever, I think had the same issues. Your family thought it was hundreds of miles away and nobody wanted to come to Washington. So I think they kept going to Shields for their social life, so they ended up going back.
When we first came here, you were taught Oxclose was District 1 and something else. Biddick was a different district number.
They had the numbers.
They all had, and people used to stop you and say, "Can you tell us where this place is?"
Yeah, and it was very confusing.
You were looking, I had the maps on the side, but people were working on numbers rather than can you tell us where
District 4
the Coach Road is, or
it was crazy.
Terrible for delivery people.
I mean, we used to get the bus if we'd been to Shields, and the bus used to come like through come in at where Sulgrave is. It came over the level crossing around that way, and we always used to say people think that if you come over the level crossing, it's like, you go into some mysterious alternative world and you'll be lost to the dragons and never seen again. And we found the same. We had a few friends who came here, didn't they, because you could buy a house quite cheaply. But a lot of them ended up moving back, but we stayed.
You got to look at it. We are central, in my eye, you're central. We can walk to the shops in 10 minutes. We've got a reasonable bus service. We're available Sunderland, Gateshead for hospitals. we are fortunate. We have a
If
car.
you've got the car.
5 minutes onto the A1. You can go to Northumberland. You can be into Yorkshire, and the amenities are pretty good for you. We have doctors, health service in Washington, and it's got sufficient facilities for you to live comfortably.
And I think at the time as well, because I was working at the galleries, I did end up going to Concord and then eventually to Newcastle. But I was walking to work at that time. Martin was working at Bolton, so that was quite convenient in terms of getting to work, because of this having been a mining community. What happened is, as each mine closed, when people got transferred to another colliery, they would put a bus on to take them. So he had the convenience of, even though he worked crazy shifts, there was a bus that he could get to work. So I think it was convenience. And then obviously when the family came along, and once the kids were at school, you're never going to go anywhere else because you don't want to disrupt them. But oddly, none of them live here now. I've got two sons in London. One went to London via Sheffield, and the other one lives in Hebburn. But he went away to Bournemouth originally, but he came back to the northeast because they have a family, and a bit like me parents, they wanted like the family around the children.
And no support.
They wanted them to grow up around the grandparents. So yeah, so. But you kind of fall in and out of love with Washington. It's had its ups and downs, I guess, like any other place. But I think overall, when you look at it, I think we're very lucky to live here. The way the villages are set out, the green spaces. I think, unfortunately, the employment situation has changed. You know, if I talk about when my dad came here for work for Dunlop, you had all of those industrial estates with big employers, Philips, RCA Records, quite big people. And that has shrunk. And then we had all of the civil service. We had the tax people at the galleries. There was Emerson, which is now a housing estate. And now Durham House is empty. And eventually the one over at Waterview Park is going to close. And there'll be no like big white collar employers here. There's going to be no banks left either.
Because that's another thing, yeah. You're taking all those, the government moving it all to Newcastle. That money was spent in our town. That money is not being spent there, and if you look in the galleries, the amount of places that are closing because that money's not there, it's moving. And it's the same as what they've done to Long Benton. They're shutting Long Benton, moving everything into the town. So even Long Benton's going to be like Washington. That money that you would have spent in the shops at dinner time, it's not going to be spent there anymore.
We're still lucky, and it's a nice place to live. But if you think about the mining communities, it was a place where you could live and work. And then when they built the new town, we got all of those industries. It was a place where you could live and work. But now it's a commuter town. Yeah. With suburbia, we're living in suburbia, and that, you know, it has its advantages. And, you know, got Nissan. Nissan Washington, not Nissan Sunderland.
And another very annoying one is DPD on what's our estate? Armstrong Estate. DPD Newcastle.
Distribution
That's
centre.
what it says on the sign.
Yeah.
DPD Newcastle. Yeah. Not Washington, not Sunderland, Newcastle. Which is wrong.
It's overall still a nice place to live with.
Like we're still living here. Mm-hmm. We're part of Sunderland. We have a Newcastle postcode. And other people not far away have got Durham postcodes. You don't live within their boundaries.
It doesn't matter. That's boundary changes. It's still Washington.
This thing of getting the bus through to Bolton Colliery. I mean, one of the things I was going to ask is, why did you not want to live in Bolton?
Yeah. I'm born there, lived there. I just didn't like it. A lot of people, they had that the village mentality thing. They didn't want to move out. They didn't have look over the horizon to see what was there. And I just fancied getting out. I wanted something new. I didn't want to be stuck.
He says that.
Yeah.
He didn't want the village mentality, and here we are stuck in Ox
In a
Close
village.
Village. We've never
Ox
moved.
Close Village ran part of a bigger town.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
No, and
No,
it's.
no, I mean.
I just wanted to. And Bolton, when I lived there, it was not a bit bigger than a village where it wasn't a town. But if you look at Bolton now, when I lived there, green fields, housing estates, where the pit was the pit's gone. That's an industrial estate, and then where you've got Asda, and then it's massive housing estates, and there used to be like saying. I remember as a kid, you walked along to the top of the street. There was the railway line going past the colliery. There was a massive big signal box with a guy in, and that nothing's there anymore.
But that's exactly the same as Washington,
yeah.
isn't it? When you talk to people who are older than us, they remember when this was
When
fields.
you came over from Sulgrave at the bottom, the railway crossing, that was when we first came. There was a signal box there at Sulgrave.
Yeah.
And
But when we first moved here and we had our flat at the bottom of Ox Close, and in fact when my parents, when I lived in Norham Court, Lambton and Ayton
didn't exist.
weren't built, that was fields. Rickleton was there, but then there was just a big gap in the middle. And this, at the top of Ox Close, was still being built, because I can remember there was constantly mud up and down the central road with the wagons going up and down. Guess everything changes, doesn't it?
It's like what London, if you look at what London was in the past, it was villages, separate villages, and they've expanded and amalgamated into one, and that's what's happening here, where you've had the fields and the building, the towns sort of amalgamating these little bits of villages into each other. You might have a little strip of green or a bit of a park, but it's all
But we've still
gelling
got
together.
it. We've still
We've
got
still
it.
got it.
I mean, we're lucky. I mean, we can go down, we've got Princess Anne Park, we can go over that way and we've got Holly Park. And that is the good thing about Washington. You can walk around and you're not next to busy roads. And I know some people say a negative side of that, and you know, at night it has a different perception. But I think overall it's a safe place to live, and a lot of that is about perception. And there's little pockets where you think, not sure if I would walk there, but I mean, I can remember the youngest grandson, we'd been to Centre Parks and we came back and we were looking after him and we walked to the galleries, and obviously here you can walk all the way along the footpaths, and he went, Grandma, this is a bit like Centre Parks, isn't it? And I thought, yeah, it is, because the houses are in little courts and then you've got these lovely footpaths where you can walk and there's no cars. Why are we paying so much money to go to Centre Parks? Come to Washington.
And Linda, where did you work in the galleries then?
I worked for NatWest in the galleries, and I was very disappointed to hear that they're closing in June, because that's where I started out. We came here in the December, and I had been working. I just started work, been working for maybe about a year and a bit when we were in Slough, and I worked for a bank there, but I couldn't get a transfer, so I had to resign because I wanted to come back here with my parents. And in the February I got a job with NatWest, so I worked in the galleries, and then I got transferred to Concord branch. I mean, there's none of that is there now, only Sacco's still there. And then eventually I got promotion, but I had to go to work in Newcastle for that. And I worked for them, NatWest, on and off for 18 years. I had a break when the kids were little, and then they had like a big, when people first started using cards to pay for things, they had a big processing centre at Team Valley, and I went to work for them. And that was dead interesting, because I worked with all the development of like when chip and pin first came into the cards. So started in a branch and seen all the changes that have resulted from that. Then I went to work for Orange at Peterlee when that started, and that was really interesting, because seeing the way the landscape, Peterlee being another new town, and seeing how their industrial life was changing, because at the time they had like chicken processing factories,
Tudor
Dewhurst, Tudor Crisp, all of them closing and people were moving into these call centre type jobs. And then eventually came back over this way and finished my working life at Sunderland Council. I always tried to get into Washington Development Corporation. When I used to work at the bank, I used to think, I wish I could get in a development corporation. I think that would be, I was an admin type person. I think that would be great, and that would be a nice, secure job. And I probably would have ended up in Sunderland Council, where I ended up anyway.
Yeah.
But I never managed to get in.
Classic, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask about the 84-85 strike as well, because I remember you saying that it was different experience because, like, you were living outside of where the strike was going on, and you were working, so you weren't part of those kind of support groups. What was that like?
Well, if you look at Donwell, Usworth, Glebe, them areas, they were I would say the hub of the old mining communities. Where we lived up here, you weren't involved in that. Linda was working part-time. I was at home. Used to get, now and again I'd get a phone call, and there was a couple of lads living near us to pass messages on that there was going to be a union meeting. They were going to be giving out vouchers to go to Chapman Presto's, it was, at Southwick, or you might be getting £10. So it was just hard because there was people living in the street who had families who had members gone back to work. There was police living in the street.
That's in this street?
Up to
We lived at the top of
There was
Churches.
police in the street. So that was a bit uncomfortable.
There must have been maybe about, I'm trying to think who lived there. The lady who lives next door to me now, they lived round the corner. Her husband worked at the pit. There was you.
Me, Alan Brass lived across the road.
Frankie.
Was a deputy.
Yeah, and Alan, who was also...
Alan Ormond was a deputy.
There was maybe about 5 or 6 families, and then your neighbours were just like normal jobs. And it was just like a completely different experience because you felt away from that. And because I was working, we never liked to
impose on the soup kitchens and
all of that. Our families helped us out because I was working, but at the time, people who worked in the pit had a really good level of pay. My income was nowhere near that. So yes, we kept the wolf from the door, but that wasn't to say we still got into debt. And then I think the other strange thing for me was because I'd come from Slough, there was somebody I started work with who I'd kept in touch with. We used to visit, I still see her now. We've been friends for 50 years, bit more maybe. And she would see all the stuff on the television, like the police at Easington and all that. And she was going, I'm so worried about you. I'm worried for your safety. And I'm saying, that's not how we are here in Washington because we're not right next to the pit.
Because there was no mines in Washington then.
But it was, you kind of felt you were part of it, but not part of it. And I think it is just like your experience was very different. And for Martin, like, you know, at one point somebody thought you'd gone back to work.
I found out this later. Because when we went back to work, there was 5 of us went down in the car, and we went to the Duck Inn on Thompson Road, and I got surrounded. What are you doing here, you scabby bastard, you? And the union guy had said, no, he's been out all the time. And this lad turned around, he says, you're lucky you are. The other morning, about 2:30, we were outside your house. We were going to break your windows in. My son, youngest son, the only one, was in the bedroom at the front. And they were going to do the house.
And how had they got that impression? Was it just because you were...
Probably.
Malicious rumour.
Yeah, and probably because he was looking after our little boy.
Yeah.
He was what?
18 months.
18 months. So he couldn't, people did take the kids on the picket lines, but you're not going to take an 18-month-old baby. I was at work, so he was looking after, and I think...
I think unfortunately what it was, there was a lad behind us, gone back to work.
Probably mixed you so.
And it wasn't till Andrew was born, was it?
Mm-hmm.
We're going down the street and she came up. And you know how, I don't, what they used to do, the newborn, people used to put money in your pram.
If you had a new baby.
So I took it out and threw it on the ground. I didn't want the pieces of silver, the Judas money.
Yeah, it was very strange. And when I look back now and I feel like, yes, we still had obviously all the same pain of it and, going through all these processes of negotiations, but it was very different for us. I don't think we suffered the level of hardship that some people did. It still wasn't easy. And you just didn't feel like you had that community network that maybe other people had. I was going to work in an office where a lot of the people weren't from industrial backgrounds, the middle class families probably, and even they would have like a bit of an attitude about, well, we don't understand, why doesn't he just go back to work? But my immediate colleagues were lovely. I mean, I worked with a lovely lady and it was quite embarrassing, really. It would make you feel uncomfortable. I've been at Marks and Spencer's and I've seen this lovely outfit and I hope you don't mind, I've bought it for Daniel, and you'd be like... But strangely, the one who was the kindest to me was, at this time I was working in what was the regional office. So my boss was like very senior in the bank. In fact, he went on to work for the bank.
He became head of NatWest.
Yeah, and he did go to the Bank of England. I think there was probably some dodgy bank thing, scandal, and he did disappear eventually. But he was a very senior person in the bank, and he was just lovely. I can remember going in to see him and saying, in those days, banks were very strict with their staff. You had to have your bank account with them. You couldn't bank anywhere else. And I get it, it was all about, possible fraud and stuff. And I can remember going to see him saying, he'd asked us for a chat and how things are going. And I'd said, well, I think we're going to have to sell the car because it was on a loan and I said, my money isn't covering the mortgage, so we've got to look at what we get rid of. We'll have to sell the car. And he said, oh, don't do that. He said, well, just freeze your loan payments. And I mean, I think they did do these things for other people. And he said, oh, I think there's a promotion coming up. You should apply for it. And I said, but I don't really want to work full time. I always said I wanted to be there some of the time for the kids. And obviously Barton will go back to work at some point. He says, don't you think about that. You think about putting yourself first. And I think you should throw your hat in the ring. You've got a good chance of getting it. And then there was still a bit of an attitude about women in the workplace. So I thought that was, I felt supported by the management, even if some of my colleagues thought I shouldn't have, tell your husband to get back to work. Militant miners.
My brother told us to go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
What did your brother do?
What has he not done? He started at railroads, and he was a draftsman, and he worked in a hospital, and then he worked down in Loughborough for an electrical group, and
but he didn't agree with
he didn't agree.
Right.
But I didn't get money off my parents to give us food now and again, and I was in the kitchen, and he said, "You shouldn't be taking stuff off me, Mum. You've got a job. Go back to work."
Solidarity, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that's the way things were at the time. The strike did split families, it split marriages, it just split a lot of people. Even to this day, I've said in other talks, there are places where people will still not talk to members of a family who 2 generations back had gone They'll still not talk to them. I was talking to a guy who I used to live further down like Durham end. He said there's some people still can't go into pubs in the village because your lot were scabs. You're not coming in here.
Wow.
I was like, but like saying on about the strike, people hadn't realised we weren't on strike for money. We were on strike for jobs, communities. Because if you shut the mine or shut the shipyard, it's not just the mine you close or the shipyard. It's the people who supply that, the shops living around you, where people go, they disappear. You just got to go down like South Durham, look at the villages down there, they're decimated, the ghost towns, Easington, they're just ghost towns. And that's what people don't realise. It's not just the mine you close, it just expands and it affects a lot of people. If you just think like the mine, people supplied wood, steel, clothing, tools, everything that's needed. They stop supplying because that door's closed to them. And it's one of those things, but the government at the time was against trade unions and the working class. And I still think partially today the government we've got now still did the same. Even though I am a Labour supporter,
It's
rather
it was a strange time.
a funny time to be, but
But we did have a nice party at the end of the strike.
Oh, yes.
In the welfare, which is not there now
Had them.
at Washington.
best sprung dance floor you could think of.
So which welfare was that then?
The big one
Washington on Spout Lane.
on Spout Lane.
It used to be it turned into a nightclub, and but it had
a
a
ranch.
beautiful sprung dance floor in there, wonderful. Got knocked down. We had a big party at a back to work one, but that was another funny one. I worked with a guy, electrician from Shields, very quiet lad, a little bit younger than me, and we went back to work with the banner, walked into the colliery, and you had to queue up, and asked your name, where do you work, what shifts, right? This is where you work, and this is what you're going. Didn't put you were told, and you will not do this, and you talk to everybody. It was, you will do this. So we came out the colliery, and as you came out the colliery gates towards the Wheat Sheaf, there was a little humpback bridge and a police station, and then there was a road running up the side of the colliery, took you to where the colliery tavern was, heading towards Southwick Road, and me and this lad Jeff were walking out, and there was the, what did you call it? The Black Maria van thing. A van parked, and the door opened. There was all these coppers in, no numbers on, just police uniforms. And he said, "Where are you going?" And I felt Jeff grab a hold of us because I said, "I'm going for the bus." He says, "I didn't ask you that. Where are you going?" And I said, "Going for the bus." He says, "Are you stupid?" He says, "I'm asking you where you're going." I says, "I'm going over there for the bus." He says, "Can I use bad language?" He says, "No, you're fucking not." He says, "You're going that way." And they started getting out of the van. I says, he says, "You're going that way." And he made us walk like, by the time I had to walk nigh on a mile out of my way, I had to go up the road to come back on because they wouldn't let us cross the road.
This is after the
This
strike.
was after I'd signed the papers. I'd come out the colliery to go home. And it was just, and this lad at the back of me, I thought he was going to fall down dead. He was terrified.
Well, remember after you went back to work and you were
Oh,
getting stopped,
yes.
the bus used to...
The bus used to stop down there on Castle Road, and there was one morning, I used to start, I'd get the bus about 2:30, 20 to 3. I'd stand at the bus stop, and this car pulled up unmarked. Copper gets out, he says, "Where are you going?" I says, "I'm going to work." "Who goes to work this time in the morning?" I said, "Well, you're going to work, aren't you?" I says, "I'm going." He says, "What's in your bag?" I says, "A pair of socks, a pair of underpants, a vest, 4 sandwiches and a flask of tea." "Tip them out." "No." He says, "Tip them out." It'd been raining. The bus came and he stopped the bus. And the driver, he says, "You just wait there." He says, "Tip it out." I tip all my stuff on the ground. Next morning, car pulls up. "Where you going?" same bloke, same thing, prod. And this was after the strike.
Intimidation. Yeah.
And it was like,
It's just harassment, isn't it?
mm-hmm. But
And then people
I
wonder,
wasn't the only one that happened
Yeah.
to.
people wonder why people who have been involved in that strike still have a mistrust of the police.
Well, I wouldn't trust them as far as my nose is from my top lip.
I'm not surprised.
But you know, we don't hold bitterness. We've got neighbours here who are in the police, and you know, that's a different.
nice,
yeah.
On a personal level, it's different, I suppose,
Yeah.
isn't
It's
it?
like
Yeah.
some lads went back to work and some didn't. I wasn't. Some lads held out till Christmas time. We'll call them BBCs, back before Christmas. And there was one came to work with me, and somebody had said I says, that's there. I says, no. So it went.
He's in the exhibition, actually.
I'm not mentioning his name.
No, and Martin, you were chatting to him.
I was
the
talking
night,
to him.
Yeah, he worked with him after.
Because when I first lived here, I had to walk from Oxclose through Blackfell, through to Albany to get the bus at Albany to get the bus to Bolton. And then when at Wearmouth, I got the bus here on Castle Road. Then I had the car, didn't I? I used the car a lot. And then when the factory there that shut, I was on the dole for a few months, and I got a job working in down towards Sulgrave for a Finnish company.
Is that called Stevens?
I'm not sure.
Steve.
Right down the bottom, just up from the railway line.
Yeah, I think it is Stevenson, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was working down there I got a maintenance technician job, working in a plastic injection moulding company. And when we were making loads of phone buy cases for Nokia, but we've done lots of other things, little car parts for seat belts, and then we evolved into doing medical parts, and I got a job working in Washington, and then they transferred the factory down to fence houses. I worked with them for 18 years at the coal in the pit. And I had 17 years working for a local company. Well, Washington, we're a Finnish company. And then I'd done nearly 14 years working for Sainsbury's. I used to deliver shopping for 9.5 years on the vans. Then I decided to come off the vans and work on the dock loading the vans for going out. And then I finished 2 years ago. I decided I'd had enough. I've been working since I was 13, so I thought I'll pack in.
Yeah.
So I worked on a farm until I was 16, and I finished on the Sunday and started the pit on the Monday.
Wow.
But when you went to Sainsbury's, you wanted to change, didn't you? Because you was, I mean, obviously being a fitter at the pit and then done an engine similar job in the
Always heavy engineer.
And a lot of hours, you know, I mean, he would get phone calls at stupid o'clock going, something's broken, can you come in, blah, blah, blah. And at the time, I had quite a good job by then.
Yeah, she was a manager with the council.
And I said, why don't you do something different? He says, do you think I could? And I said, of course you can.
Yeah, because what happened was we were making stuff for AstraZeneca and a lot of chemical medical stuff, and there was a guy who had a factory in Holland and Ireland bought us out to shut it down, and I'd been an engineer in nearly 30 odd years, and I thought I want to do something different. I tried me damnedest to get into the co-op funeral service because you got a beautiful overcoat, and then I couldn't get a job there. Then, as I say, I got this job.
Literally,
I've got
just started doing the online deliveries. It was brand new. They were setting up a brand new
because I'd been applying for jobs as well, and they were driving. Oh, you haven't got the relevant experience, and then they offered us a job, and I thought they've made a mistake. I'm just going to go for it. I went for the interview, and I said, "Well, I haven't got any. No, we're not looking for that. Doesn't matter about experience. You'll be trained." And I thought, well, I'll go for it. Because I've been for an interview and I'd done a test with the ambulance people had done the patient transport. Those that I passed, but they didn't have enough jobs. And I'd started with Sainsbury's, and they rang us up and said, "Oh, I've got a job." I said, "Well, I cannot. Sainsbury's have paid for me training and whatever." "Oh, well, we'll keep you on the list." And they kept us on the list for 2 years. They kept ringing us up and offering us a job.
But you were quite happy with Sainsbury's.
It was shifts. So it was when I wasn't in that all the time. But if I'd been there, it was Monday to whatever. And it was all days. So it stopped us. You wouldn't have had as much of a social life or being able to get out during the week and do stuff. It started off, we had 6 vans. And then when I left, there was, I think it was 14. But it ended up a good team. And then when the pandemic hit, because I was only working a 30-hour contract, 25, 30-hour contract, over 7 days, it went from working 25 hours to working 70 hours, 7 days a week.
It was crazy, because everybody wanted the shop and delivery.
Like we were starting work at 2 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes we weren't leaving till 2:30 in the afternoon.
But
the manager at the time was good. He'd come and he'd say, because it was me and my mate who, more than the others, done lots of hours. And he'd say, "Are you sure you're all right? I'm not complaining about your hours. Are you's all right?" And he was great. And so it was just, well, you couldn't do anything. I went to work, I came home, because you couldn't mix with anybody. And clapping your bloody hands at the door for people, that was stupid.
We were laughing because he'd gone to bed.
Yeah.
And then of course it's because he had to be up early. Then of course everybody's out in the street clapping, and I wanted to go, "Oh, can you be quiet? He's gone to bed. The key worker's gone to bed."
But it was, it took its toll on a lot of people. That it just where I was working, the amount of people who came in and people who were driving who couldn't cope.
But you would imagine that store in Washington would be serving the people of Washington, because there's a lot of people here. But they were doing deliveries, well, there's probably still
we went up to
Northumberland,
Morpeth way, past Hexham, right out into the wilds of Hex. What's the reservoir up that way?
Kielder.
Not Kielder, there's another one. But we were going
Reservoir.
Derwent way, Stanhope, out in the middle of nowhere. Like, I was up by up near Vinderlander one time, and you're driving up. Where am I going? I'm sure when I was driving up there, I spotted 2 Roman legions I'd been lost, just marching across. Can you tell us where to go? But it was crazy. We were going down Durham, Bishop Auckland, and Bishop Auckland they were delivering as well. But it was just massive. I mean, I'd done one day. One of my shifts, I'd done 178 mile, and that wasn't the most. Some lads, so there was one time, we weren't far from the Scottish border at times, going that far up, out into the middle of nowhere, like a cottage. Just who wants to build a house here? And there was nothing.
Washington is like just a little microcosm representative of the change, isn't it? If you think about how it's, I mean, Oxclose is on the old maps as a village, and I think there was a mine here
over there
in
1700s.
So we've had that industry, and then you got the new town, and it brought like all those white collar jobs, and there was factory work, which kind of replaced the heavy industry, and now that shrunk down, and we've still got lots of interesting little businesses on the business parks. But now we seem to be a hub for delivery